The song that Eben I chose was Fortunate Son by the American rock band Creedence Clearwater Revival and is written by songwriter John Fogerty as a means to protest the draft in Vietnam War during the late 1960s. The song was officially released in 1969, a couple years after songwriter John Fogerty was drafted. So getting right into it, Fogerty begins the song's first verse with these two lines that signify the drafting of young men between the ages of 18 and 25 to fight in the Vietnam War during the 1960s. This song was released near the end of the U.S.'s most extreme decline in patriotism, with many American men fleeing the country since they weren't made to wave the flag, or in other words, built out to fight in the war after witnessing the televised horrors of the Vietnam War. The red, white, and blue in the next line clearly referring to the American flag, but also as a reference to the patriotism that those who went to war showed. Thus, it is why Fogerty said they're red, white, and blue, basically saying that they're patriotic. In the next line of the first verse, Fogerty refers to Hail to the Chief, the official song of the President of the United States, who at the time of the song's release was Richard Nixon. The band referenced in this line is the United States Marine Band, who play the song whenever the President appears at public events or speaks. In the last line of the first verse, the pointing of the cannon is like Uncle Sam, who is the image of patriotism, pointing his finger at you while saying that as an American, you have an obligation to your country to defend it. Connecting this line to the last, basically Fogerty is saying that when the American people hear Hail to the Chief and see the President, they are pressured into serving their country due to them being an American. During the Vietnam War, many soldiers that were drafted saw that the war was evil and unnecessary, while the people at home believed that the army was in good morale. Moving on to the chorus, in the first two lines, Fogerty describes how he isn't lucky enough to avoid the draft due to not having the family influence and power that the son of a senator would have, most likely referring to President Eisenhower's grandson, who would have had the family influence to either be given a deferment from the military or a position of his choice on the mainland near his family. Many Americans, including Fogerty, saw this as very unfair that due to them not having as much family influence, they would have to risk their lives for a meaningless war. Fogerty repeats the next two lines of the chorus throughout the song to further emphasize that he isn't the son of wealthy people or people of high political standing. He wrote the song after getting drafted in 1966 as a means to protest the war and draft through counterculture.
In the first two lines of the second verse, Fogerty sings about how most rich families didn't have anyone drafted in the Vietnam War with the help of their money. The most likely scenario was that many families probably bribed government officials to help their sons and husbands stay out of the war. When Fogerty sings about the folks born with a silver spoon, he is talking about how many people born into rich families don't understand the meaning of hard work and are given resources that they use for themselves and special privileges that those of lower standings don't have. In these two lines, Fogerty explains that during the 1960s, the taxmen would come to the houses of wealthy people to audit them, and the wealthy families used to hide their expensive items in order to be put in a lower tax bracket, so that they could avoid paying more taxes. Many houses owned by wealthy people would end up bare and very basic when the taxmen would come around. Since wealthy people used their money to keep their sons from going to war while hiding their possessions in order to avoid taxation, they were essentially two-faced in their actions. By saying that the house looking like a rummage sale, in our current day terms, we would consider that essentially as a garage/yard sale. Fogerty was drafted to the Vietnam War in 1966. In this part of the song, he describes how, due to how his family is not of wealthy status, he had to get drafted compared to other families who could keep their sons in college in order to avoid being drafted for the war. Even if they did get drafted, they would often be kept away from any dangerous jobs such as combat and would end up with safe jobs not on the front line. Fogerty repeats these lines once again to further emphasize how he isn't fortunate enough to be the son of wealthy people or people of high political standing.
In the first two lines of the third verse, Fogerty explains that some people were essentially born to be soldiers and serve in the army due to the fact that they aren't the sons of wealthy or powerful people, meaning that they would be subject to the draft. Furthermore, Fogerty conveys that patriotism is most commonly found within the poor, and that many poor people volunteered for the war with the hopes of national pride and adventure. Additionally, when Fogerty says they send you down to war, he's talking about how many different war industries encourage volunteering and registering for the draft so that you could die for their profits, which many Americans at the time didn't realize. Moving on to the last two lines of the third verse, Fogerty illustrates how the United States gradually increased its presence in Vietnam through the use of quotes, which are, "How much should we give?" and "more, more, more, more." Looking at the lines, we are asking the public how many more troops we should give them. During the Vietnam War, the U.S. kept sending troops, and the public approved at first due to the belief that these actions would bring a swift end to the war. In March of 1965, approximately 3.5K troops were dispatched to Vietnam, but it wasn't enough, so the United States kept sending more troops until we eventually reached full-scale war.
Fogerty repeats the line, "It ain't me," to further emphasize how he isn't cut out for the military, similar to how he used it previously to emphasize how he isn't the son of a senator or a millionaire. Once again, trying to show that he is not a fortunate son. Fogerty transitions from saying fortunate son in regard to being the son of either a wealthy family or a family of high political standing, to now just saying he isn't the fortunate one to signify how, due to his upbringing in an average family, he doesn't have the privileges that fortunate ones would have if they were born in a family of higher standing. Fogerty repeats the same lines, except instead of saying one again, he says no, 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 to again emphasize that the fact that he is neither a fortunate son nor a fortunate one, to end the song.